He's editor-in-chief of Breitbart News and a New York Times best-selling author. And on this podcast, he brings deep research, prescient analysis, and world-class guests. He's Alex Marlow, and this is The Alex Marlow Show.
All right, welcome to The Marlow Show. Thank you for being with me today. We are going to get to, in a little bit after I open up with some of the news, we're going to speak to Special Assistant to the President, Principal Deputy Press Secretary Harrison Fields. He's going to break through where the White House is at on the big, beautiful bill. And that's going to be the main topic of conversation. For now, it's sort of big, beautiful bill day. That's where, because it feels as though this is the centerpiece of everything that's being discussed within Washington, and particularly in conservative and Republican circles, where there's a lot of pain points in this thing. And there's a lot of legwork going into the Senate side, trying to make some updates to the House bill. There was a lot of discussion. I talked to a lot of people in top Senate offices about whether or not they're going to try to have their own version of the big, beautiful bill and put that on Trump's desk. But Trump has made clear to senators that he likes the House version. So really the key is we got to get this thing, get the process rolling. But a lot of fault lines, I'll identify some of those. We'll track some of those. And we're probably in about a 1 month sprint. Is June 4th as we're recording the show. We're looking at July 4th, hopefully, to be able to move this thing along by then. So it's going to be a long month of debate and exciting. There's a lot because we're debating amongst ourselves. To the victor goes the spoils, and the spoils means we get to fight amongst ourselves on whether or not there's enough cuts, whether or not there's enough funding for the stuff we want, and what exactly to cut. Pain points we're keeping an eye on. Josh Hawley making sure that Medicaid is funded for people who really need it, particularly people in rural hospitals, conservative voters. Rick Scott, Ron Johnson making sure that spending is at a reasonable level. Rand Paul never voted for a debt ceiling hike in his life. We're going to have to convince him to do that. And if not, we can't lose many other Republicans. And then there are all the moderates, people who want the SALT, people who want the some of the green provisions to remain in there, some of the moderates in there, like Murkowski, Tillis, Curtis, Moran. All of these people are opposing a total repeal of green energy tax credits. And you get the moderates, McConnell, Collins, Murkowski, all of them want to see it passed, but they want to make sure that there's no additional tax burden inflicted on their constituents. So there'll always be something that they'll throw in there that will not be palatable to, your average, I think, Breitbart reader. So keep an eye on all that. Look for Russ Vought, Stephen Miller to be the top spokespeople for the bill, for the administration, who are, I think, the most able at communicating some of these cuts where they're necessary, and they understand the legislative side of it as well, also the OMB side, and we'll get into some of the scoring in a little bit. But I've got a big thesis on what is going on with Elon Musk and his opposition to the bill, and I'm going to give you that in a second. But I do want to tell you about the incredible partners I have at Priority Gold, the original sponsors of The Marlow Show, help The Marlow Show get off the ground. You go to prioritygold.com/freedom, or you text the word freedom to 24999 to see what they've got to offer. They've got a free gold guide for you. And I will tell you, if you started getting gold when I recommended signing up Priority Gold, you would have increased your whatever you'd put in there by 24% plus. I think gold's up huge this year, over $3,300 an ounce at one point, and it is heading up from there. It probably could hit $3,700 an ounce this year, maybe more. That's what Goldman predicts. It's a perfect hedge against all this economic chaos, and it's just a smart way to diversify what you're doing. And you can do it with some of the best people in the game. Priority Gold, easy to do. prioritygold.com/freedom. Don't sit on the fence. If it's not for you, what can I say? I think you're wrong. But if it is for you, prioritygold.com/freedom, or text freedom to 24999, because you help the show when you do that as well. So it's a big deal. All right. So here's the thing that's happening right now. Elon Musk is all in against the bill. He's tweeting Kill Bill memes from the Tarantino movie. He's saying we're heading to debt slavery if we support this bill, and that this is all unacceptable to him. And he just tweeting up a storm saying that he wants he just dissing the bill in a major way. Let me remind you, this is the signature piece of legislation that Trump is putting out there at the start of his administration. We elected Donald Trump. Musk even wanted Donald Trump elected. And this is the thing that Trump wants most. This was discussed before he even took office. You guys know me. I want almost everything to be passed in appropriations style bills. And we're going to have an appropriations process which is going to deal with a lot of pork, a lot of discretional spending that will play out over the summer. But this is mandatory spending that we're talking about. And most importantly, we are talking about locking in the Trump tax cuts from 2017, which if we do not do that, this will be the biggest tax hike in American history. It'll be an automatic loss for the Republicans in the midterm election. So it is sort of non-negotiable. We need to get this through, and it's a matter of negotiating to amongst ourselves, amongst Republicans, to make sure that we have the best possible bill we can, of course. And everyone's entitled to do what they need to do for their constituents, to ask what they want, and to see if a compromise can be struck in a lot of ways. But the killing of the bill, this is essentially self-sabotage of Republicans that would wipe out the first half of Trump's presidency and guarantee that the second half we're just seeing what executive orders can get through, and that's it. The Congress will be completely in a holding pattern until we go back to vote in 2028. And so what was all of this for? So just know that that's the original premise of where we're coming from. So not to say the bill's perfect, not to say we'll ever be totally satisfied, but there's stuff in it. Like we went through it in John Binder's show yesterday with John on about all of the increases in ICE agents, the increase in border wall spending, the increase in ICE detention facilities, the raises for Border Patrol. These are all sorts of things where this would have been a complete dream if we had this stuff in 2016, 2017, in Trump's first term. Remember, we just shut down the whole government for a 5% increase in border spending for the wall. I'm sorry, $5 billion, not even 5%, $5 billion for the border wall. We shut the government over that. Now we're talking about walls funded, ICE is funded, more ICE, more deportations. And on top of that, we're getting the tax cuts locked in. So it really is, everything else is window dressing. And I will tell you that it is, I don't love the level of debt we've got. I don't like the level of deficit. But it's a mistake to act as though the Republican position is that we're all of a sudden deficit hawks. The best example is Ronald Reagan. Famously, we're running a debt, we're running a deficit. He goes through with a major tax cut anyway, and then the deficit goes down by a measure of GDP. So we cannot cut our way to a balanced budget on day one. It is a process. It's a multi-year process. This begins chipping away at it, and we can always do better. And if there are ways to do better on this particular bill, I'm all ears. I want to see it. But there's a lot of fatalism going on online if you spend a lot of time on X, the Everything app, suggesting that because the cuts are only, I think now, 1.4 trillion, that's not enough, that we got to get higher than that. Well, the CBO has just scored Trump's tariffs would cut the budget deficit by 2.8 trillion right there. So we're combining tariffs with tax cuts, and still have some cuts on the bill, but still we cannot sabotage ourselves by too many cuts that are going to mean that we can't pass a bill. And we also can't sabotage ourselves by making sure the tax cuts don't get locked in. So here's the big point. This is the big thesis here. This is the big point for the day. Elon Musk is someone who at Breitbart, we've had a lot of positive coverage, a lot of not so positive coverage, given his deep ties to China, which he's has not disavowed. He does not go against China because he knows a lot of his business is dependent on China. And remember, he set up Tesla plants in the Xinjiang region, was where the Uyghur slave concentration camps are. It is. I'm not saying he condones everything that China does, but he has said that China rocks in the past. That's a quote, China rocks. So just know he's capable of doing that. So what is that from? What is that instinct? Is he naturally just pro-China? No. Is he naturally always just pro-American knee-jerk? No, I don't think so. He is a CEO. I think he's a very interesting person who's interested in the world. He's a lifelong learner. He likes to be on the cutting edge. Obviously, he wants to put colonies on Mars. But in this instance, he saw that Trump being a vessel for his passion for free speech, which is clear to me that that's legitimate. And I do think he would like the idea of a thriving America. I think he thinks that's best for him, for the world, for his businesses. But note this, he is now in the private sector, and he is operating as the CEO of an electric car company, the biggest electric car company on earth. And this bill, the big, beautiful bill, we finally dropped the one branding, which I really like. The big, beautiful bill, the new BBB, this cuts the electric vehicle mandate. Musk cars, dollar for dollar, would not be able to compete with comparable cars with combustion engines if not for the EV vehicle mandates and tax credits that are going to get cut in this bill. And just note that premise when you're listening to Musk. Now, I can't read Musk's mind exactly. I don't know how much of this is him doing his fiduciary duty on behalf of his shareholders and using his means and his platforms to do this, to advocate what he believes. But it is smart business sense for Tesla, which is struggling right now, to make sure that there are no more EV mandates that are removed and there are no more EV tax credits that are removed. And this bill, the big, beautiful bill, would do those things. So because this bill will be devastating to his company, Tesla, you have to understand that premise when you're evaluating the things that he's saying. So just note that. I'm not trying to cast some sort of bigger character judgment than that. Just note the fact of the matter is that he has fiduciary responsibilities to the shareholders of Tesla, and this bill would be terrible for Tesla. So just know that. So just don't think that he's operating at a pure of heart, pure conscience. There is no reason for you to believe that. So just note that when you're seeing his criticisms out there, it is axing the electric vehicle credits. That, I believe, is the main motivation here. I could be wrong. Musk wants to come in on the show. He's a 24/7, 365. I will wake up in the middle of the night and fly anywhere on earth to go talk to him. So let's do it. Let's have it out. But that's the bottom line. There's a lot of good in this thing. And I think we're going to get you a W, as I've said multiple times on the show. There are some things that I don't think are perfect, but it is huge steps. There are strides in the right direction relative to anything we would have thought possible in a Democrat administration and even prior Republican administrations, even the prior Trump administration. So very important. So I'm all for it. If you want to be warriors for cuts, it's fine. I hate the bloat, but we're talking about where are these cuts going to come from? Where are you going to, is everyone going to cut military spending? I would like that in some ways, but we're not, realistically, is that going to happen? The entitlements that we have also need to be looked at, but are we going to pass a bill with the narrow majorities we have where we're cutting entitlements? Maybe not. I don't know if that's true. So if you care about pork, and Musk is tweeting about pork, he has to know better than this. He's a smart guy. So he's tweeting about pork. There's too much pork. This is not where the pork gets addressed. The pork gets addressed in the appropriations bills that we'll be debating all summer. So if we're looking for a genuine, honest Musk here, then he should know this. Either he's just so new to politics that he's not aware of it, but I don't really buy that. I buy that he knows it, and he knows it's sowing chaos and division on the right by saying that this doesn't cut enough pork. Pork is not the issue. We will address the pork in the appropriations bills that are going to be playing out over the summer, and we'll pass for the end of the fiscal year. And then we address the pork there. Look, if there's any quote-unquote pork in this thing, fine, take it out. Great. I don't like the pork. I hate that stuff about Washington. I'm just saying, realistically, are we going to cut off our nose to spite our face here? That's what he's calling for, and I don't think it's going to happen, but I want to give you that premise when you're evaluating for yourself where you're at on this thing, that there are very interested parties who are running against it online, and that's noteworthy. And what is the alternative? This thing doesn't pass. What happens next? It is tax hikes, Democrat victory. So we've got to figure out a way to get this thing across. All right, speaking of China, Chinese nationals charged with smuggling agro-terrorism weapon into the U.S. Reading from Paul Bois at Breitbart, 2 Chinese nationals been charged conspiracy, fraud, smuggling a deadly biopathogen in the United States. United States Attorney Jerome F. Gorgon Jr. announced 33-year-old Young Keen John, that's quite a name, Young Keen John, 34-year-old Zunyang Liu, both citizens of the People's Republic of China, were arrested. Various conspiracy charges, which included smuggling a fungus called Fusarium graminearum, which scientific literature classifies as potential agro-terrorism weapon. DOJ had a big press release on this. The noxious fungus causes head blight, a disease of wheat, barley, maize. We say maize. How do we pronounce it? I live in LA. Like, you get a lot of the Latin pronunciation. And rice. It's responsible for the billions of dollars in economic losses worldwide each year. Fusarium graminearum toxins cause vomiting, liver damage, reproductive defects in humans and livestock. Guys, this is such a big deal. We should not be importing people from the CCP to study our universities, to use our facilities, to report back. They're only here because the CCP lets them. Why are we allowing them in and out of the country? What Binder broke down yesterday with the visa overstays, this is a failure of the legal immigration system. where people become illegal immigrants because the legal immigration system is not organized enough to get the people out who are here, who are thoroughly vetted. It is scarier when bad people come in here legally, and that's what we're witnessing here. So we need to be cracked down on this thing right away. This is why I'm very sympathetic. I don't think it's realistic, and I don't think in my heart I agree with it, but I'm very sympathetic to the people, the end cultures of the world, who just flat out say we need an immigration moratorium. No more people coming in, so long as we don't trust the U.S. government to vet them properly. People need to be vetted properly, and then once they're here, they need to adhere to the rules. If you're in a travel visa, you cannot be here for more than a year. We need the basics of this stuff. People should not be coming in to study at American universities, taking spots from American children, if they're going to, or jobs at American universities that are, when they're going to use it to try to do things they shouldn't be doing. Think about the coronavirus pandemic. What was going on at that Wuhan lab? You could break it down and you think, well, maybe we're studying a virus, and maybe if we do this right, we'll be able to anticipate the next pandemic. And if we can really do this in the controlled environment where everything is regulated and monitored and studied, then perhaps we can we can stop the next pandemic before it starts. But then how did it turn out? It turned out that effectually the coronavirus was a bioweapon that was developed in a Chinese lab with American money because we were suckers to participate. That's it. It was a sucker play. We were suckered by Dr. Fauci and the establishment in this country. And just note that that's exactly what's happening at our universities and exactly what's happened here. Jean, one of the guys who allegedly received, who had the biopathogen, received Chinese government funding to work on the pathogen in China. So his electronics also allegedly contained information detailing, it's a girl, I'm sorry, her membership and loyalty to the Chinese Communist Party. What are we talking about here, guys? Never acceptable. Peter Schweitzer always points out that the Chinese talk about something called unrestricted warfare, where they look at everything as a weapon, trade as a weapon. The agriculture can be, there are agricultural weapons that are out there to devastate our crops. They buy up all of our farmland. Their health Silk Road, where they're trying to create their death trap diplomacy, not just in terms of trading goods, but also in terms of medicine. These are all not just bioweapons, but these are all weapons in their asymmetric warfare to try to take over the world. And just note that. And I just don't know how many more pieces of evidence we need to see. Should never be acceptable, never okay. And the long arm of the law has got to come down here, but then we need to change policy right away. All right, other immigration, family of the Boulder terrorist suspect detained by the Department of Homeland Security. They all need to be deported. Here's an issue. Again, this came up on the show with Binder yesterday, and important to note this. When people are coming in and their family is here and they're legal aliens, they will never leave. If their family's already here, they will never leave. The best case scenario with the illegal aliens is that they come in, and if their family is not here yet, and they don't get some sort of amnesty where they get a chain migration where they can bring them here, then maybe they'll send enough money back. When they feel like they've sent enough back home, then maybe they'll go back and be with them. But if their family's already here, they're not leaving. And this guy, this terrorist, Mohammed Sabri Soliman, he had his family here, and a lot of them are illegal. Maybe all of them are illegal. And I haven't gotten through every last one of them. But they got to go. You can't be part of terrorism. If you're a guest in this country, you cannot be facilitating any sort of family member terrorists. It sounds so obvious, and yet we've been so gaslit because we focus on such non-issues. We focus on, trans rights, trans children's rights, the right for men to beat women in sports. We spend all day talking about that. And then we miss basic stuff like Chinese nationals coming in and doing agrarian terrorism to us, perhaps, and developing weapons to be used perhaps against us in our own schools and universities. And we miss family members who are harboring illegal alien fugitives who intend to torch Jews in our streets. So that's where we're at. 142 criminal aliens with 473 convictions deported from Houston to Mexico. Golf clap for the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, and the removal operations, ERO. Great stuff there. Glad to report it. Happy to report it. But why were these guys here? Not one of them should have been here. 142. We had a Trump presidency already. We know he was trying the first time. Really disheartening in a strange way that there's still so many. And just note, if the big, beautiful bill doesn't get through, that has increased ICE funding, and that's what we want. We need them deportations. The Democrats so triggered by this. Hakeem Jeffries is threatening to unmask ICE agents. Every single one will be identified, he says. Just completely wild stuff. And I should have grabbed this clip for you guys, but I want to get the show in. But he says that the Democrats are seeking to identify the ICE agents. Every single ICE agent who's engaged in this aggressive overreach, trying to hide their identities from the American people, will be unsuccessful in doing that. No matter how long it takes, he says he's going to identify all these people. We're going to make sure the American people have the transparency necessary to hold people accountable when they're folks who cross the line. Like, all right, fine. Like, you can't overdo it, but we're going to name and shame the people who are trying to enforce our illegal immigration laws when we've seen what illegal immigration has done to our country. How about our culture? Do you think culturally we're in a nice spot with all this illegal immigration? All right, Secretary Hegseth has ordered the renaming of the gay rights icon Harvey Milk from a U.S. Navy ship. A couple questions here. First of all, Harvey Milk, I have not done a deep dive on Harvey Milk, so feel free to educate me. aloha@alexmarlow.com. You're always free to email me and fill in my gaps. He was kind of, his thing was let gay people just be themselves behind the scenes and let's not make a big conversation and we're just going to do our own thing. Wasn't that his deal? The privacy for us and privacy for you, and just sort of like a pro-privacy guy. But he did allegedly prey on children, which is obviously not okay. I know in a gay context, there's more context to that just because of the way things are for gay men, and not my world, not something I know a lot about, but I have had enough conversations with people about it over the years that I don't know how judgmental you want to be about that, but it's not a good thing in general, preying on children. So Mary Rice Hassan tweeting that Harvey Milk was a pedophile. So that should be good enough reason to not have your name on a Navy ship. But let me go back a step. Why was a gay rights icon put on a Navy ship? This does not make any sense to me. Why do we ever have this? So, of course, I back Secretary Hegseth here. It's just funny because Harvey Milk's gayness seems so mild relative to all the trans crazy stuff we see every single day in this country. And there was a time where gay people were not treated well in this country, so someone's got to stand up for them. But obviously, pedophile stuff, if he was a pedophile, not okay. But in general, why put the gay rights icon on the Navy ship? This is the point to me that I like about Trump, is that Trump sees these very strange things. And he says that why is a gay rights icon on Navy ship? I know that he served in the Navy, but that said, a lot of people served in the Navy, and he got up to a junior grade lieutenant. Now, how many people have been junior grade lieutenants and how many have their name on a ship? And was he some sort of a decorated hero? That I don't know. In his Navy service, I would like to know that. If someone fill me in, but was he some sort of a Navy hero? I didn't know. I know he served in it, but it just seems like, why do that? Obviously, we do it for political pandering to various groups of people, and it's nice when we undo it. It's fine. I'm good with it. All right. Fun one. Karine Jean-Pierre announced she's leaving the Democratic Party in a new book promising to look into the broken White House. Now, she's got a book. She said she's an independent. Just note, Karine Jean-Pierre barely comes up in the Jake Tapper Original Sin book. And this is so important. I got a feeling I'm going to be banging this drum for a long time about the hoax that is the Original Sin book by Jake Tapper. Here is the point. The point of Original Sin was Jake Tapper was going to protect all the Democrats who could potentially return to power and attack all the Democrats who will never return to power. It is an act of cowardice to some degree, and I think that the whole point is try to scapegoat the people who are already riding off into the sunset. That is Joe Biden, his family, and his orbit, and he's going to protect the people who could one day return to power. Karine Jean-Pierre, who was in the room with Joe Biden every day, presumably, or was kept out for nefarious reasons, and she was not a part of the cover-up, according to Jake Tapper. But then now she's going to write a book about how horrible the White House was. Obviously, everyone is just trying to point the finger at everyone else. And the people who could one day maybe be powerful, maybe be a big media figure, maybe be a political figure, Karine Jean-Pierre certainly in that list, and is certainly the first black gay press secretary, right? So people can ride that to some sort of powerful job in the future. And she's spared by Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson in the original Sin book. And now she comes out, she's got her own book, and she's going to try to do another cash grab, trying to trash talk the Biden White House and all those around Joe Biden. Note that's what's happening. There's a massive gaslighting campaign and hoax going on, and it all is a cover your ass, face-saving vibe here. This is not about trying to get to the truth about the Biden White House. That said, there is someone who's trying to get to the truth, James Comer. James Comer's announced a massive investigation. Going to be having all these hearings, bringing people in about the Biden cover-up and to see what they actually knew about Joe Biden's decline. And most importantly, the policies that were undertaken, perhaps not by Biden himself, but by people who were not president and were not elected president and were simply in the room with Biden, or maybe that Otto Penn, whoever was operating it. So Comer's on the case. And look, do I ever have high hopes for congressional investigations? Of course not. I've been disappointed. I've been in this business 17 years. I know how these things work. It generally doesn't go great, okay? But we're going to try, and Comer's the best guy to try, and I think he's got the highest integrity of just about anyone out there, and I think he's a dogged investigator. So let's give him a shot. Do high hopes? No, but I feel like he's the guy who might be able to bring in the right people, and not just bring in the blast from the past Democrats, the Ron Klains and the Mike Donlins and the Biden family members who will never return to power. I'm hoping he brings in the Buttigiegs. I'm hoping he brings in the Kamala Harrises. I'm hoping he brings in the cabinet secretaries who could one day return to American public office and torment us. So that's who we should be looking into. What did they know? How much did they go along with Biden's incompetence? And that's what I'm looking at. And I think that we'll get something. I'll tell you, we'll get something. All right. I've got some culturally stuff that I like. I feel like I should bring this thing home so we can get to our guest. A couple of quick ones. CNN crashing to 34,000 viewers. That's just literally a cat playing with a ball of yarn on that network would do better. So even Jake Tapper's book, not restoring their credibility. Fox News is now beating ABC, CBS, and NBC. It is, Fox, they're doing some stuff right over there. They're satisfying a lot of different groups of people, a lot of different demographics. So their primetime stuff is pretty red meat for audiences like mine, and a lot of their daytime stuff is more palatable for I think softer conservatives. So they're reaching a lot of people, I got to say. So you got to doff your cap some days. Not to say I like everything that goes on. I wish they're more hardcore in some ways, but it's, they're doing some things right with their mega platform and resources. The Kennedy Center sells out showings of The King of Kings after Pride Month events were canceled. I mean, this is so cool. That's from Angel Studios, who was, I've talked about on the show a couple of times, an animated movie that goes through the life of Jesus. And so they're going to show that instead of some of the Pride stuff that got canceled. It's great. The federal funding should not go to anything related to trans. We've got to cure the country of the trans contagion. Trans contagion is wreaking havoc, is ruining girls' sports, it's ruining families, and it's ruining people's lives. And it really is, I think, indulging a sexual fetish of people who like to impersonate the opposite sex. I think that's the vast majority of these cases. That's what it is, it's a perversion. And I'm not saying there isn't an exception or two on earth, but I'm saying the vast majority of what we've seen is a cultural contagion rooted in sexual perversity. And that's how we need to start talking about it. And we need to start saying, we will not give you any federal funds. This needs to be a private deal. If we're to tolerate this, we're tolerating it only when you're in private. All right. Most conservatives say they have excellent mental health issues. I talked about this on the Kirk Show yesterday, so maybe I'll save this if I have more thoughts on it. But it is very related to the trans stuff. Is that people, when you abandon God and you become more secular, when you don't focus on the family, and when you don't focus on meaningful pursuits in your life, you spend a lot of time online, just consuming online content and not creating meaningful work on your own. That is a formula for unhappiness, not to mention that they're relinquishing health, they're relinquishing exercise, they're relinquishing looking good in terms of traditional beauty to the right. Beauty is good for the soul. Hard work is good for the soul. Communion with nature and God is good for the soul. All of this stuff is now conservative. So if you think that the surveys are going to suggest anything other than that, it is the mentally fit people are more conservative than we're on a different planet, because the most obvious findings of any study you can imagine. But it's still good to see it. Nate Silver flagged it, the pollster. So there you go. All right, that's enough for now. We are going to get into our special interview here with Harrison Fields from the White House. I will say thank you to producer Harry and Marcus for helping me put the show together. And yeah, let's get into it. All right, happy to be joined now by Special Assistant to the President and Principal Deputy Press Secretary Harrison Fields. Harrison, I want to talk about Big Beautiful Bill. It's the main thing. It's kind of the centerpiece of the Trump agenda, I think, for the first 6 months. And a lot of debate going on. Now, I think this one's going to be a W for the president. I think we're going to get there, but he is asking a lot of people to do things that they're not comfortable with, for example, raising the debt ceiling, things like that for a couple of years. First of all, give me your overview on how the White House feels the negotiation is going so far, and then I got a lot of specific follow-ups. But give me your overall perspective.
Yeah, well, the White House and the president feels confident that this bill will get across the finish line. We're going to host senators here a little bit later to hash out some of the differences in the bill. But let me tell you, this is Republican policy at its finest in one big, beautiful bill. We are lowering taxes. We are securing our border. We are bolstering our military. We are creating MAGA accounts for newborn babies. I'm the father of an 8-month-old, so that's going to be great for the next one. We are also cutting taxes on tips, cutting taxes on overtime, protecting our seniors. We are cleaning up Medicaid, securing it for future generations by taking 1.4 million illegals off the system. We are ushering in work requirements. This is Republican policy that Republicans have been promising for decades, all in one big, beautiful bill. Let's just put it this way. When this is passed, it's going to be promises made, promises kept once again by this president.
Okay, I want to go through some of the pain points and some of the objections that we're seeing. I think a lot of them are things you're dealing with. I think a lot of them are going to be things that are not necessarily even a part of this negotiation. We'll get to those in a little bit, but there seems like there's a lot of misconceptions about what the bill actually covers. I think a lot of the debate online has to do with things that are going to be taken on during appropriations over the summer and are not really a part of this bill. So, but just taking some things one at a time, I want to talk about Medicaid. President Hawley has insisted that the final version should remove the House passed bills to the House passed Medicaid cuts. And I think this is really a delicate one because we hate waste, but we also want to make sure that rural Republicans are able to get Medicaid that need it. What is the real plan here? What do you anticipate will be in the final version?
Yeah, the president and Senator Hawley have spoken. I believe the senator understands exactly what the president's priorities are of this bill. And let's not be confused what the president is doing with this portion of the bill. We are solely intended on protecting Medicaid and strengthening it. I will reiterate that. Protecting and strengthening Medicaid. We are taking 1.4 million illegal immigrants off this system and preserving it for people that need it. Pregnant moms, low-income individuals, seniors that are struggling. The Americans that need it the most will have access to this critical expenditure for the American government, and we are going to make sure that anybody who needs the system will receive it.
So what are the changes that the Senate is discussing or you anticipate will be in the Senate bill that the White House supports and wants to see?
Well, it's an ongoing negotiation. As I mentioned, senators are going to be at the White House today to talk about what their expectations of this bill is. But if you break down the bill, every Republican senator largely will agree with the policy here. There may be, a slight difference or two, but overall, this is sound Republican policy. And when you talk about the deficit and the debt, this bill achieves $1.6 trillion in mandatory savings, the largest deficit reduction and spending cut in over 30 years. And I hate to age myself, that's older than me. So we're in a situation where you are achieving monumental policy priorities in one big, beautiful bill. And I caution people that want to make perfect the enemy of good. This is one big, beautiful step in the right direction. We're also sending a rescissions package. We sent that yesterday of $9.8 billion in codifications to what the president's been able to achieve through DOGE. So we understand we have a spending problem in this country. The president is committed to addressing it. One big, beautiful bill is one big, beautiful step in the right direction.
Okay, so let's talk about a couple other of the. I think there's an elephant in the room here, which is that a lot of the discussion that's going on is about deficits, and I don't love a super high deficit, but the issue here is really about tax cuts, and it is historical precedent. Is Reagan was running deficits, and then he had a historic tax cut, and then the percentage of the deficit by GDP was decreased after that. And so I feel like we're kind of having two conversations at once here, and this is where I'm very much aligned with the White House and Trump 100%, is that we've got to get these tax cuts locked in. Do you feel like the people are understanding this fact, Harrison, of those you're talking to? Because I feel like people are trying to get other issues that are important to them into the discussion now, where the main thing for me here is the tax cuts. If these tax cuts do not get locked in, Democrats win the midterms and we got problems. So it just feels like that is part 1, 2, and 3 of this thing, is getting those tax cuts going.
Right, and this is why intellectually honest conversations like the one you and I are having right now are so important, because the speaker has mentioned this, OMB Director Vogt has mentioned this, the president, Leader Thune. We've all been saying this is a reconciliation bill. This is not a spending bill. This is not to address anything other than the reconciliation process, which tax cuts are able to go through. We were able to do that with TCJA and Trump 1.0. Here we are again. And to your point about taxes, if we do nothing, if we fail to pass one big, beautiful bill, and like you said, give Democrats a win here, guess what we're also doing? Handing the American people a massive L in the form of tax raises. This president does not want to raise your taxes. He wants to lower taxes. So we got to pass this bill to make sure we get the fundamental thing, right? No taxes on tips, no tax on overtime, lowering the tax burden on the American people. You're going to see massive take-home pays increasing, and the American people are going to have more money in their pocket, which is exactly why they voted for President Trump.
One of the tax cuts in particular that's been debated is the SALT taxes, the state and local tax deduction. House passed a quadrupling of the SALT tax. Some senators wanted to go up, some wanted to go down. It's a weird one for me because I live in a blue area and would probably benefit a lot from this thing. But I think as a principled conservative, it seems like a handout to blue states, and I just don't. I don't think that's a good thing for the country. I think blue states should get you. We should have to deal with what we vote for, and so it's sort of a bailout for blue states in a way. But where is the president on this exactly?
Yeah, the president is the ultimate deal maker, and he's sympathetic to the concerns of people in my home state of Florida who don't want to subsidize Fairfax County, Virginia, because of their asinine tax policies. We understand that. The president is sympathetic to that. But he also is a numbers guy. He understands that the numbers in the House do not provide for a situation where we can have SALT the way we were able to have it in 2017. He's a master negotiator. He was able to get this bill to a position where Chip Roy and Lawler were able to be on the same page. When you've got Chip Roy and Mike Lawler on the same page in the House of Representatives, that's a good day for the Republican Party. And the president and Speaker Johnson were able to achieve that. So now this goes off to the Senate, and we're going to make sure that there's unity on the bill as well. We are in the middle of a negotiation. We have massive passage out of the House. We are still in the phase of negotiating, making sure we get this bill to the right place. And for all the people at home wondering where we're at, the White House just put together a website on whitehouse.gov that allows you to track the process of the bill as if you were tracking the process of your Domino's order. And I would encourage Americans to go to whitehouse.gov and look at our one big beautiful tab that allows you to kind of track that progress, and urge your senator to pass this bill.
Yeah, everyone should go and do that. I think that's really useful. So a couple of the discussions that I think are important, but maybe you're missing the point to some degree, is a lot of people in Congress are demanding more cuts, or at least publicly. I like the idea of more cuts, but a lot of them are discussing things like pork. Pork doesn't really factor in here. We're talking about just mandatory spending. A lot of the pork is some of those discretionary spending things. It'll come up again when we do appropriations over the summer. But it's one of these things where what are the demands that the president's fielding here in terms of additional cuts? Because some senators saying, I'm not going to vote for this thing unless we see $5 trillion in cuts. The CBO score is estimating $1.4 trillion. That's a huge number. I've never seen a number like that, but it's not $5 trillion. So is there daylight? Do you anticipate that there's any places where the Senate's going to eye additional cuts that the House somehow missed?
Yeah, so it's an ongoing negotiation, and I don't want to muddy the negotiations on your program, unfortunately. But what I'll tell you is this: the senators have not been shy in saying how they feel, and I'm going to let them speak for themselves, and I'll speak on behalf of the president in saying that the current form of the bill is something that he's willing and able and happy to sign and wants to sign. He understands that now a part of the sausage making of how a bill becomes a law is that the Senate now needs to deliberate this bill. This is why he's speaking to senators. This is why he's taking in the input. But he's got the commitment from Leader Thune that the bill as presented to him is the bill he's willing and ready to pass. He understands that the Senate has to go through this bill and make sure that we are all aligned. So this is why we are cautiously optimistic that we will pass the bill in its current form or a similar version of the bill. But every senator is going to have their time to debate this. They're going to have their time. They already have. The president's been working the phones with senators to see what can we do to get this bill to passage. And I'll let those senators talk about exactly what they're looking for. But the president wants them to support his agenda. This is a legacy item that we're talking about.
Yeah,
and I don't think
certainly
any Republican wants to stand in the way of the president's legacy.
I don't think so either, and I've been communicating this loud and clear. Whatever principles we have, and we have many that sometimes butt heads on these things, but overall, this is sort of a life or death deal, which is why I think it's going to be a W in the end. I think it's just a matter of what the final bill looks like. The really interesting stuff overnight with Elon Musk, who is leaving his government post. I think did a yeoman's job helping Trump get elected and trying to identify some places for cuts in the government. But a lot of those are sort of the pork-related things, Harrison. They're not necessarily the mandatory spending that we're talking about in reconciliation like this. But he's out there very negative on this bill. I want to get the White House's reaction to that and what you make of Musk's sort of shading the bill at this point.
Well, first and foremost, the president publicly wanted to acknowledge and thank Elon Musk for his service to this country in the Oval Office last week when he said thank you, presented him an honorary key to the White House, and really wanted to expand on what he's been able to do in about 5.5 months' time, which is something that no CEO in America, you and I and your viewers would agree, would take time from their C-suite lifestyle to come work in the EEOB of the White House or the West Wing of the White House and try to get a hold of our fiscal spending. No CEO besides Elon Musk would be willing to do that, and we thank him for that, and the results speak for themselves. Two things can be true at the same time. Elon Musk now is not an SGE, he is a CEO. And he's focusing on his company and what would be good for his company. He is doing what a CEO has to do. But let me tell you this, President Trump is the CEO of this country, and he owes it to the American people to pass one big, beautiful bill. So there's a lot of media narrative about if there's a great divide. There's no daylight between this White House and Elon Musk. Elon Musk has his priorities, and this White House and this president have their priorities. We may not be aligned on this issue, but let me tell you this. We're grateful to Elon Musk for the work that he was able to do for this administration. DOGE will continue to yield historic results, and this president will be committed to working with the Senate to get one big, beautiful bill passed.
One of the highlights for me in the bill as it is now is it cuts EV mandates and that it hurts Musk's business. Do you think that's where the criticism is rooted in?
You know, Tesla on X has been very clear about their dislike of the bill. But one thing I also want to highlight, you've got a lot of companies in America that are very favorable of the bill. If you look at Verizon, if you look at Uber, these are all CEOs that have come out in support of this bill, and you've got a lot of chambers of commerce that are also supportive as well. So at the end of the day, I can't speak for Elon Musk or his companies, but they have proper spokespeople. Elon Musk doesn't hold back on anything. So I'll let him speak to what his company's interests are here. But the interest of this White House is the American people and making sure the bill gets passed.
Yeah, and I noted this to my audience at the top of the show, Harrison. It's just there's all this stuff that's not being said openly that it would be nice is that I think it's clear that Musk wants those EV mandates back in place. And I think that that's really driving him here. And I think that it's sort of the elephant in the room, but he won't say it that way. And he's also he's not just a smart guy, he's a brilliant guy, and he's conflating pork with mandatory spending, and it's just not the same. And that's not even the debate now. And I just don't know. There's something a little dishonest to me about it, and that's what I'm trying to identify for the audience. And you don't need to weigh in there. I'm just pointing that out that's a part of it, and I hope it doesn't really interfere. I know he's doing what he needs to do as a CEO, but I want to ask a couple other things about the administration's response to the EU and China calling the bill protectionist. I mean, it's kind of music to my ears and the audience's ears, but I I don't think the president wants to think of it that way. What's your reaction there?
Well, the amazing thing is you have our allies and maybe even some adversaries that are somehow confused that President Trump is an America First president, and he's going to do everything possible to protect the interests of the American people and of American industry. They shouldn't be surprised, because it's not just one big, beautiful bill that prioritizes America. It's the president's tariff policies. He is calling every nation, ally or foe, calling them out and saying, listen, you guys have taken advantage of us way too long. We need to protect American enterprise. We want to protect American workers, which is why a lot of these countries have come to the negotiating table, and they want to negotiate a good deal, not just for their country, but for their relationship with the United States, who most of these countries need to exist. They need our trading relationship. So it's a newsflash. We got a new president. It's no longer Sleepy Joe. It's President Trump, and he's going to be America First on every day that ends in Y.
Okay, I got two more for you. I know you got to run. We could do 20 minutes on Sleepy Joe, but we didn't do that today. Maybe you'll come back and we can do that. But I did mention earlier in the show that Congressman Comer announcing some big investigations, so we're going to be excited about that. But the one international, one domestic. Are there guardrails in place to ensure foreign multinationals don't exploit U.S. subsidies? Is there a Made in America requirement in the bill? How do we assure that a lot of these tax breaks and a lot of the president's desire to be America First in this bill, how does this get enshrined so that our companies are thriving?
Yeah, so what we've seen over the last 4 years is that intellectual property rights have been completely taken advantage of. You know, our American companies that put blood, sweat, and tears in their work are losing to countries like China, who are basically just stealing the intellect and the majesty of innovation in this country. We want to make sure we protect them. If you look at what the president's been doing with AI and cryptocurrency, that look no further than policies dedicated to making sure that American innovation is always going to be protected. We are more interested in bringing countries to America to thrive in this country than bolstering the countries or companies in other lands. So we want to make sure that we're protecting our businesses, protecting our workers, lowering taxes for both of them, protecting intellectual property rights, making sure that our tariff imbalances are corrected. And the president is always going to be committed to that America First agenda, which would never sell out American businesses.
Harrison, last one. I know I'm keeping a little longer, but this is like a dream bill on immigration for us. I mean, I can't believe some of the immigration, just the thought of having been there, you know, in 2016, when it was just so pie in the sky that we'd get anything done in immigration. If this thing gets through, I mean, we're talking new ICE facilities, we're talking new ICE agents, we're talking more border wall. I mean, this has somehow gotten pushed down to the bottom of the pile. I don't know why. Can you speak to some of the immigration positions? Yeah, and it's not just immigration. And the things we're doing for our military, I mean, increasing our naval fleet so that China isn't eating our lunch when it comes to our naval capacities either. So the bill is so good and big that we could talk about it all day. But you're right, immigration is one of these things that might have not got a lot of the headlines. But when you look at just on a sheer fact of morale, if you talk to Border Patrol agents, ICE agents, and they see that they're going to get a 10% raise. They're going to be protected. The wall is going to be covered. They're going to have the technology. They're going to have the resources to do their job. It's refreshing to see that while the president didn't necessarily need a bill to usher in common sense immigration policies, we're already securing the border. It's about 99% secure. This bill is going to go above and beyond to finish the wall, give money to the people that are putting their lives on the line every single day on our northern and southern borders to protect it. If we don't have sovereignty, we don't have anything. So the American people voted for a secure border. They get that with this bill on top of a host of other things, which is why Republicans should support this bill. If you're not supporting the bill, guess what? You're basically supporting Biden's border policies, because you're going against the president's initiatives here. So Republican senators, I think they're going to come around. You mentioned it. I think it's going to be a W. We feel cautiously optimistic. But listen, the Republicans on the Senate are going to have to do what's in the best interest of their constituents. And let me tell you, their constituents want this bill. Yeah, especially that tax cut starting right there. It's making sure that happens. Harrison Fields, appreciate the time, my friend, and we'll see you next time.
Great conversation. Thank you.
You're welcome.
He's editor-in-chief of Breitbart News and a New York Times best-selling author. And on this podcast, he brings deep research, prescient analysis, and world-class guests. He's Alex Marlow. And this is The Alex Marlow Show.